Hi guys, this time around we're going to give you another episode of It's Just Different, where we talk about some of the things that may be striking to Americans in relation to the French culture. A lot of times we think about the French and the Americans and we're similar in so many ways, and that's true, but there are some drastic differences as well, and we want to talk about those so that you can feel more like you're coming along with us in this journey, in this ministry in France. So with that, let's talk about the French state of emergency that has existed since 2015 over there. What is the state of emergency? In the French Republic's constitution, it gives the president the right to declare a state of emergency for up to 12 days at a time. Now, when we think of a state of emergency, we oftentimes think of a governor or a city leader, like a mayor, declaring something, which unlocks federal funding and maybe unlocks the National Guard to do some kind of disaster relief work. And although that it can be utilized in France for the same way, it really hasn't been to this point in time. So since this clause in their constitution was introduced back in the 1950s, it's been used 6 times, the most recent being from 2015 till November 1st of this year, after the major terrorist attacks in Paris. So in France, the state of emergency is a bit different. It allows the Minister of the Interior, basically the chief policeman for the country, certain rights, certain authorities that he wouldn't be allowed to have otherwise, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But you should know that since 2015, the current state of emergency was extended 4 times. The president can initiate it, it can last for 12 days, and then it has to be regularly renewed or extended by a full vote of the parliament. And this again happened 4 times, and it officially ended the 1st of November of this year, but it really only ended because a new law was passed that indefinitely extends certain pieces of this state of emergency. Actually, some of the more controversial pieces, to be honest, like the ability to search someone's home without a warrant, like the ability to detain someone for an indefinite amount of time without a warrant. It's pretty big stuff, huh? Well, number 1. The state of emergency gives the governmental authorities the right to suspend certain citizens' rights. Basically, that means certain liberties that are held dear in France are suspended for the sake of security. And one key way that this happens is by police units forcibly searching somebody's home or business. One example that I read up on was a gentleman who lives in the suburbs of Paris. He's a Muslim, he's a North African immigrant, and he just so happens to enjoy shooting for sport. Because he's a part of a shooting club and because he's Muslim, they raided his house, they handcuffed him in front of his children, put him on the ground. His kids are crying about this. It's the middle of the night. They searched everything, found nothing. They let him go, and that's how it works. No ramifications for the police, nothing at all. They are giving full authority to do this. In fact, since the state of emergency started in 2015, there have been over 3,500 homes searched. And again, the vast majority of those were Muslim immigrants from North Africa or other places in the African continent. As you can imagine, this tactic is very polarizing in the French society. If you are a French national, predominantly white middle-class French person, you have no problem with this by and large. It brings security to you. They have found stuff, so it makes you feel a little more safe and at ease. But if you are an immigrant coming in from somewhere else, you feel like you're a second-class citizen, you feel put out, and you feel like your rights have been immensely restricted, and they really have been. And as I already mentioned, the state of emergency has officially ended November 1st, but this new law that indefinitely codifies certain things, it codifies this. The police still have the right to search homes without a warrant based on a hunch. Another key thing that the state of emergency and these new laws that have been codified gives the government is the ability to detain people indefinitely under what is called house arrest. Now, many times this isn't a literal house arrest where they are confined to the constraints of their home, but what it does mean is the range of movement is immensely restricted. Usually they have to check in with the local police precinct 1 to 2, usually 3 times a day. And you could imagine that this really makes life difficult. A lot of the folks who have to do this don't have easy access to vehicles. It takes a lot longer to get to where they need to go. Now, for better or worse, The French population are living with this new normal that will exist for an indefinite amount of time. It's just different. So the second key thing that Americans would find shocking or different regarding the French state of emergency is something called Operation Sentinel. And officially, this isn't a part of the state of emergency. If you were to go to France, you would find on every single public place, you would find patrols of 3 to 4 to 5 soldiers, fully decked out in camo, their battle fatigues, with their assault rifles at the ready to take aim and fire. Now, in the States, we saw stuff like this right after 9/11 for maybe just a few months, but it's been the case in France since 2015, and people tend to love it. 96% of the population feel more at ease and safer because this is the case. In fact, many tourists continue to come to France, they say, because these soldiers are there. It gave them the encouragement through their trip that they were wary about doing beforehand. So, very, very different, very striking. When Beth and I were in France, we actually walked amongst some of these patrols, and I'll tell you, it's intimidating seeing somebody fully decked out with the power to kill you in an instant walk right past you with this massive weapon. What happens is that these soldiers become a target, or some would prefer to say, a shield against the populace. Just in this last year alone, 2017, there have been 3 attacks targeted at the soldiers on patrol, and many people believe that targeting these soldiers has redirected terroristic activities away from the general population. So it's something that exists, it's something that will continue to exist indefinitely in France as they live under this new normal with these increased security measures in place. Now I'm curious, leave a comment in the comment sections below and let us know, what do you think about this? If you were a French citizen living in their shoes, experiencing multiple attacks a year in your country, would you be okay with this? Would you approve of it? What do you think? Yeah or nay? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you on this one. Thirdly, something more on the bright side to leave you with. Under the French state of emergency, there have been these restrictions put on mostly North African immigrants. Because of all these things, there's actually been a spotlight put on to the issues and the plight of France's North African immigrants. The French president had made a statement declaring billions of dollars to be pumped into the suburban slums of France's major cities. In fact, the French president, just a week ago, as he announced the allocation of these funds, gave a speech, and in it he said this: the French state has fueled extremism by abandoning its poorest neighborhoods. What he meant by this is that the former administrations in France have chosen to ignore the plight of the poorest of the poor there, and in turn they have allowed radical Islamic clerics to come in, preach messages of hate, and radicalize African-descended French nationals. And as a result, many of the attacks that have happened in the last 2 years were done from French nationals who had these African roots that have been radicalized at home in these neighborhoods. This is truly an amazing time for Bethany to be in France. Things are changing at unprecedented rates, and we are so glad to be part of it. More than that, we are glad that you are a part of this with us. We are blessed by you. We are blessed that you watch these videos, that you learn and grow and come with us, and we're blessed by your partnership and however you give it to us. We're so glad you're with us. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time. Au revoir.